Welcome to the Mixorcist.
Perfection.
There were no errors this time. I don't get it. I don't understand it.
Yeah, I don't know either. But
nothing blew up.
Yeah, it's just one of those days. Everything's coming up Mixorcist.
Yeah. That's what I think too. That's what I think. Yeah. Hey, what about horror movies? You see anything good lately? Did you watch Hatchet like I told you to?
You will be pleased to know that I watched.
Oh, I'm very pleased.
I watched Hatchet and Hatchet 2.
All right.
And the first half of Hatchet 3, and then I fell asleep. Sid Haig, man.
It's a good night though.
That's a great night.
That's a good, but terrible in a good way.
Yeah, I mean it's very much. I would never say ripoff or anything, but it's very much inspired by the whole Jason Voorhees thing.
Nobody's trying to rip off Jason Takes Manhattan, and I think that movie had such a special vibe.
Yeah,
from like a 90s horror movie thing. I don't know. I don't get it. Everyone's trying to do Blair Witch.
Well, that's so you remember
Jason Takes Manhattan.
Remember when you were a kid and the Muppets, like the Muppets go to Manhattan, or when the Muppets go to the city?
I do.
And it's very much in the spirit of that, I think, right?
I feel like it was the right thing to do.
It was
a lot of people question it, but I don't.
Hey man, I know it's no Alien versus Predator, but
No, I never got into those as much. Funny.
There's.
But what I do get into though is mixing vocals. As you know, I'm a podcast guy, so for me, vocal chain is everything. So I thought maybe we could show off a couple vocal chains today, see what shakes loose.
That sounds amazing.
You in the mood? You want me to roll first?
Yeah, why don't you go first and see what you got going on?
All right.
And then
can you see my screen? Okay.
I believe I can. It is right there. Yeah, right. I got it.
So I have two specimens for you. I have something that you would record as a podcaster. One of the challenges is that everything is dry, right? There's nothing in the background unless you're doing something more voiceover style with some music or background sounds in the background, which is different. So I've got two samples for you. One was recorded with a Manley reference cardioid through a Neve Shelford with the EQ and compressors engaged, just doing some light work, stuff that I'm comfortable committing to. And then the other one is just a plain old SM7B into Sound Devices Mix Pre. So basically the same chain you're hearing us speak through now. So let's listen first to the condenser.
Podcast. Hello, team. Hello, everybody. Good to see you. Welcome back. Did I freak you out?
All right. So not a terrible sounding vocal, but I think one of the first things I would reach for is the classic LA2A. So I often put it in limit mode. That's just a personal choice of mine. I don't like the compressor to do a lot of work on the vocal track right when when it's starker, there's nothing else going on in the background. Like nobody can hear you scream. So let's put it on and let's listen for that warming effect that the LA is known for.
Did I get you excited? We're not going to talk about the kind of code that you thought we're going to talk about.
Oh,
we're going to talk about the other kind of code.
Did you hear that? Right away?
It just jumps right forward.
So, the peak reduction's a little high on that. I'd be looking at just tickle the meters, maybe up to about 3 dB.
Code. I'll clarify that in a second. And hey, if you want to talk about code, if you're willing to talk about 2002 ComOb,
that's actually pretty good. And then I'll just seek to maybe equalize them a bit so one's not louder with or without.
Objects, I'll take you on. But first, let's remember why we're here. To create an elite tribe of leaders who truly serve their clients and communities by doing what matters and what works.
Oh, it pulls you all the way down to the bottom. Like it just adds things that you weren't sure were there. And it creates a real 2B vibe, but a real warm vibe. So that's a great place to start. So let's leave that in. My next choice is a flexible but characterish equalizer. I'll often reach, as you know, for the Manley massive passive. This is a great EQ. I have a preset that I use for my podcast, which we'll just clean it up with a little bit. And I'm going to take the high boost out for now. And I want you to listen. What I'm looking for here, rather than step you through the dials, is just a little bit of high pass filter. I always need to scoop out of a condenser around 200. And for my voice, I want a bit of a presence peak at 1.5 to 1.8 or 2 at the most. Let's listen to what the Manley does out and then in.
Relentlessly chasing value and excellence.
Like this is without.
There's so many resources out there about what you need to do to be agile, but we're focused on who you need to become in order to lead teams.
Super subtle. Let's try it again.
Those fundamentals to create
Without?
a truly unstoppable force in this industry.
Listen for the chesty, a little bit of woolliness in that, that kind of lower sinus area, right? You can hear the chest building up.
Guys, if this show helps you, tell your friends. And
Let's kick it in.
Join us in the Facebook Badass Agile Listener Lounge.
So it's subtle. I didn't touch the bottom end where there's some nice low resonance in my voice personally, and I want to leave it there, but I don't want the woolliness. So I've added, let's really extreme out the mid-range punch and see what it does.
You'll have access to exclusives and previews and all kinds of fun stuff, plus the community.
Now, I hope you heard that. What I love about the Manley is you can add stuff all day and none of it really sounds bad. So let's listen with and without. I'll do it with the dial.
This is where you go to build tribes. So come on out and join us.
With?
All right. Here's the bottom
Without.
line. Here's the truth. Effective people, also known as badasses, live and function by a code.
All right. So on a medium setting, you'll notice that it really, it takes your mind off the low bass. So if there's any woolliness remaining there, adding something at around the 2K mark supersedes it. Now let's see what a high-end boost will do. Let's listen to the shelf. First without the shelf.
I've done a couple of episodes on Creed, and to me, Creed, code, vision, service, they all roll up into the same thing. What are the ruling forces by which you want to
take it all out
to create the kind of person, teammate, leader that you really want to be? The only way to get there is with a code. When you live by a code,
So you should have heard the top end really all of a sudden create some air, and that shelf starts down. I want to say it's around the 5 or 6K range. So it's a pretty wide shelf, but it adds instant air, but also instant sibilance. So I will usually prefer to leave that out, and instead I'll go for a tape plugin that has a high frequency lift on it. Whether it's UAD's Ampex, Soft Tubes tape, or one of the IK Multimedia tape plugins, all equally good at adding some nice high end to bring some of that air back. Now here's what's interesting. Lately I've been playing with, let's leave the LA2 in, and let's take the LA2A out, and let's try a Fairchild emulation by Acustica called Ultramarine. And let's play with it a little bit. There's different time constants here, which are like a combination of ratio and attack release times. Let's dig in until we get something interesting.
I want to talk to you about your code. That's this week on the Badass Agile podcast. Hello, team. Hello, everybody. Good to see you. Welcome back. Did I freak you out? Did I get you excited? We're not going to talk about the kind of code that you thought we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about the other kind of code. We'll clarify that in a second. And hey, if you want to talk about code, if you're willing to talk about 2002 COM objects,
let's kick it in.
But first, let's remember why we're here. To create an elite tribe of leaders who truly serve their clients and communities by doing what matters.
What you may notice there is that it definitely compresses, but it also, the Fairchilds have like a tendency to accentuate the mid-range depending on how you set it. Some of these other time constants like number 1 or 2, less so, but 5 and 6 will tend to really smush it. But the great thing about this Acustica version is it's got blend control. So we can smoosh it aggressively and, unpleasantly. And then we can dial some of it back out. Let's see what that does.
I want to talk to you about your code. That's this week on the Badass Agile podcast.
That's really sticky,
hello,
right?
Team.
Really compressy.
Hello, everybody. Good to see you. Welcome back. Did I freak you out? Did I get you excited? We're not going to talk about the kind of code that you thought we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about the other kind of code. We'll clarify that in a second. And hey, if you want to talk about code, if you're willing to talk about 2002 COM objects, I'll take you on. But first, let's remember why we're here.
Wow. I mean, the presence is there, but we're not really destroying the signal. So this can be tonally aggressive, and from a compression perspective can be aggressive too. It's not really great at just limiting transients and then walking away. It can have a heavy hand if you're not careful. So that mix control is really quite beautiful. Let's compare the LA2A to the Fairchild. Have a listen.
To create an elite tribe of leaders who truly serve their
Fairchild.
clients and communities by doing what matters and what works.
Take it out.
Relentlessly chasing value and excellence like a badass.
LA2A.
There's so many resources out there about what you need to do to be agile, but we're focused
Fairchild.
on who you need to become in order to lead teams. So let's hammer down those fundamentals to create a truly unstoppable force.
Again, it's subtle. I hear more warmth in the LA2 and I hear less mid presence that the Fairchild seems to bring out. The compression, to me, it's not as punchy. I think the LA2 might win there. Now, let's talk equalizer for one more minute. What I really love lately is Acustica Coffee. So this is, what are these, the EMI boards?
It's like the Chandler tube bender kind of stuff, which is like germanium. Yeah, it's based on those kinds of designs.
Right. So this has got a lot of variability. You can literally choose different equalizer models and you'll notice the controls change. So look at the stepping on this control as I go through different equalizer models. That should change. Did it change?
It did.
So this went from like 200 to like 1 point something. And then if you bring it over here, it's really focused on the super low end. So you can choose different EQ models here. And let's try bringing in the same EQ curve with the coffee. So give me a second to dial it in.
I want to talk to you about your code. That's this week on the Badass Agile podcast.
Let's grab the 200 and pull it out.
Hello, everybody. Good to see you. Welcome back. Did I freak you out? Did I get you excited? We're not going to talk about the kind of code that you thought we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about the other kind of code. We'll clarify that in a second. And hey, if you want to talk about code, if you're willing to talk about 2002 COM objects, I'll take you on.
Oh, wow.
First,
I don't know if that subtracts, does it?
To create an
I feel like that's not taking anything out.
Some of them might be boost only.
Yeah, let's try it from here. This one's got a negative. Yeah, so all this does is go from peak to shelf. So let's take this out, put this in instead, and we'll grab our 200 from here.
To create an elite tribe of leaders who truly serve their clients and communities by doing what matters and what works. Relentlessly chasing value and excellence like a badass. There's so many resources out there about...
I mean, if you wanted warm and woolly, there it is, but I actually want to back out some of that 200.
Is there one down there that's not a shelf, though? I mean, because that looks like it's a shelf, right?
Is this only a shelf? Oh, no, this is the same thing. Hey, this is going from shelf to peak.
Oh, is that what that does? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's cool. I really like this EQ, too. I've used it a bit. I've been using the free one. They got a free version of this called Coffee the Pun, which is amazing.
And it's great. It's insane, that thing. All right, so you know what? I'm going to skip the low frequency rather than fuss with it in front of you here, but let's grab some of that 1.5 and let's listen.
Out there about what you need to do to be agile, but we're focused on who you need to become.
Now notice, it's not as gentle as the Manley, right? Like that can get ugly pretty quickly, but let's flip through the different equalizer models real quick.
Become in order to lead teams. So let's hammer down those fundamentals to create a truly unstoppable force in this industry.
That's way more gentle and less nasal, so that can maybe add the presence peak that you want without doing any damage. And then let's grab some high filter. Maybe let's go up for 12. Let's do a little boosting here as well. Let's have a listen without.
Guys, if this show helps you, tell your friends. And don't
Let's
forget
crank
to
it.
join us in the Facebook Badass Agile Listener Lounge. You'll have access to exclusives and previews and all kinds of fun stuff, plus the community. This is where you
pretty
go
gentle.
to build a tribe. So come on out and join us. All right,
That's pretty nice.
Here's the bottom line. Here's the truth. Effective people, also known as badasses, live
Let's take the whole thing out.
by a code. I've done a couple of episodes on Creed, and to me, Creed, code, vision, service, they all roll up into the same thing.
Without?
What are the ruling forces by which you want to live to create the kind of person, teammate,
And with.
leader that you really want to be? The only way to get there is
So that's a pretty nice flavor. Let's just quickly alternate between the Manley settings and then the coffee. This is the Manley.
Is with a code. When you live by a code, you become a certain
Here's
kind
coffee.
of person. But when we as individuals can't, open quote, be, close quote.
I almost like coffee better on that one. I think it adds some warmth and character that maybe the Manley fails to reach for, and adds a really nice, like, again, if this is a solo track, if this is all you get to hear, I want some of that warmth. I want some of that tubiness. I want a little bit of interest from my plugins, right? I think you hurt my head real bad. Now, I would never use a reverb on a vocal. On a podcast vocal. But on a sung vocal, absolutely. My favorite kind of reverb when I don't want to hear reverb is a very short plate. So here I've got lustrous plates. I got a nice pre-delay, about 50, 60 milliseconds, I think. Take the width all the way down. I don't want any stereo imaging. Don't need modulation, but let's see what it does. And then let's play with the dry wet until we back it all the way down.
Then we're forced to live by the written rules and scripts that we've set for ourselves. And we discussed on a previous episode, is it better to read from a script, or is it better to have those behaviors come from a place of authenticity and confidence? And I think we all know the answer. But here's the trouble. You may have noticed this. Who we are is defined by our behavior in moments.
So it's really slight. You're not really hearing a tail there. Let's just try it with and then without.
Moments of difficulty, stress, challenge, uncertainty, discomfort, which, of course, if we're trying to grow, we want to be in uncomfortable situations. But as you know,
that just sounds like
moments.
That sounds like you're in a really big room. I don't really find that all that oppressive and highly listenable. Now, again, on a vocal, maybe not so much. Here'd be something worth trying. You can try really great reverb by one of my favorite developers. It's called the B2, and it's by 2C Audio. I won't say they're an overlooked company, but it's not one of the names you hear each and every day. And they do have some really great, I'm going to have to dig for the preset real quick. They have some great ambience, and so they've got these ones like mastering ambience and so on. Let's just flip through a couple of the presets and just listen.
We fall back to the person that we really are. So if in those moments of difficulty, we notice that we're angry, pessimistic, selfish, unfocused, or some other quality that we...
So the mix is pulled way down there, but let's have a listen without, and then I'm going to kick it back in. Tell me if you like it.
We no longer want to associate with as badasses. Then we have some work to do. So here's what. I often recommend, and teams...
So you know what? That one is... It's almost got a little modulation, almost like a stereo doubling chorusing effect that may be unpleasant when the vocal's by itself. But if that vocal had some background music and it was the only thing in the mix that was sitting right on the floor with no space, I'd put that air on there, that mastering ambience, just to give it a tiny lift off the floor. Do you know what I mean? So that you don't have this wonderful stereo image and then the voice is just kind of stuck to the concrete. It can really lift something up and out. Now, if I were to play with an SM7, I'd take a different approach. Let's have a listen to this one.
Hello, everybody. It's C-Dubs here. Welcome to another episode of...
Do you hear how far in the dark that one is? This one needs an API. So for that, really quickly, just to show you how nicely the API sound really works on an SM7B. I just want you guys to hear this. And I have a nice little preset for you here. Let's listen with the pink EQ.
Hello, everybody. It's C-Dubs here. Welcome to another episode of This Week in the Forge, where badasses go to train
without
to be melted down and then shaped, hardened, sharpened into a new breed of leader. So each week we get together as a team and we reflect on our actions and our activities.
So here it's pretty much the same frequencies, guys. It's 10K, it is 1.5K, and it's a little dip at about 180. And then I have a slight pull on the shelf. I think it's 50, just to take some of the bottom out. Totally different approach for a totally different microphone. But for an SM7B chain, I got to have this. And then I would very quickly add a compressor by the folks that made the Distressor. It's called the Arouser, which is a terrifying name. And let's just have a listen to what this bad boy can do. And this week in the Forge, we talked about some super cool stuff. We've been working on the practice of mental visualization. That's the technique that elite athletes use so that they can rehearse the duties that they're called upon to perform and to do it with perfection. Now, those duties could be facilitation, difficult conversations. It could be presentations, public speaking. But we're learning that. I got to say that the Arouser / Distressor combo, nothing beats it for a dynamic microphone. This really, like, I use this chain in a music mix. So for podcasts or shows where I have stuff in the background, this just brings it right to the fore. Anyway, I kind of gone over my time.
That's great. Just
those would be my two.
What that did to the low end.
Those would be my two chains.
The low end, the way it just sort of compresses around it and leaves that popping through is beautiful, right?
It's voodoo shit.
Yeah, it really is. I heard that right away.
But hey, you can really pick from any platform, UAD, classic sounding to a more vintage modern sound in, you know, something like the Empirical Labs, all great tools, you know, and you don't have to have these brands either. There's the stuff that's in your DAW, you could get the exact same result.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's all like there's so many choices now. I mean, you just pick what works for you, and then, you know, you're going to do a lot of experimenting and comparing, but eventually you settle into something that you really like. And
well, it's like choosing a weapon, right?
That's right.
Are you an automatic machine gun person? Are you a hatchet person? Are you a sickle or a scythe? I mean, that says a lot about your character. Well, I mean, there's still it tells everybody who you are.
There's still the old tried and true wire garrote as well.
Yeah. You know? So. Or you almost said the word. I thought you were going to say trident.
Oh, the trident. Yeah, it's a
killing machine.
Awesome.
All right, Eric. Sorry, I'm passionate about vocals. Yeah. I mean, I make a living by processing vocals. So let's hear what you would use, man. What would you pick?
Sure. Well, I'll do something with some singing on it. Let me just get it rolling here. This is like this is a demo of something that was supposed to go at the end of a movie. It never really happened, so it got to a certain stage. If yesterday became tomorrow. Nothing on the vocal right now. It's an SM7 until like a millennia, maybe some compression on it. So what I'm hearing right now, behind it, you got this synth patch with a synth piano and some kind of choir. You hear that like way in the background kind of thing. Yep. It's really nice.
It's like a pad very low.
Whereas here you've got chasing fading stars in flight. We always get by. Some slight delay or something on there, but not very much. I mean, it depends on if you want that kind of contrast, you know, what you were going for. The plan here was to go overdub that with a real piano. And then both of those things would be like right in your face at the beginning, and then gradually those synths would come in and then everything would open up and that sort of thing. And this was a few years ago. I mean, this is kind of at a time where music had like two modes, you know, like completely dry in your face. Oh, I'm so intimate. I'm so Carole King, or just like totally blown out with reverb and you can't hear anything, you know, and I kind of like I like to show maybe those dimensions, but like for certain points in songs or for certain phrases or whatever. And I kind of like the happy, I tend to not want to just stick at one of those ends and say, yeah, this is the way the song's got to sound. It's like, no, this is the way this part of the song's got to sound. Because unless, of course, you're trying to recreate a folk performance or like an acoustic performance, or you just want that someone sitting in the living room and, you know, on the stairs and being authentic while, you know, live casting on their iPhone or whatever. I mean, that's, but when we're talking about production and stuff, there's points of interest. You want to move a production around. You want to create some stuff. So I think there's probably, you could probably sync that back right away. There's a plate. That's what I heard.
Oh, it's very subtle. Yeah.
And then there's a delay, which I think was supposed to come in at a certain point. come in at certain points. Let's just leave that in a little bit right now, just so so that contrast is not too stark between the two. And let's go move on to the voice. I've got an EQ here, which is a Fairchild EQ. The Ultramarine comes in Ultramarine. Yeah, it comes in that set, the same set that you had with the Fairchild compressor. Beautiful. Let's hear what it does. I think I've rolled a little low end off, and I've got top end booster on 10K, and that's it. Without? With? Always alive. Just cleans it up a little bit, makes it sit a little bit more forward. It gets rid of some of that low end that we don't really need. Next up would be some compression, probably. And I believe that I've got some of the same ones that you do. I'll usually just line up a bunch. First thing I'll try is this, the tried and true T-Rex Black 76 1176 plugin.
Great,
because it always works. If I had no other plugin, I just put this on, and that's with.
Oh, it's just there.
And you can, of course, exaggerate it. It tends to be really kind of heavy-handed when you... The water falls from the horizon.
Yeah.
It adds a lot of stuff, a lot of kind of... It spits out these...
Chasing fading stars in flight.
Which on an aggressive rock mix is beautiful. That's what you want. If I'm doing a heavy rock track or just something that's supposed to have some guts or maybe a rap track or something, but it's got to be aggressive kind of sounding, then this is probably the first thing I reach for, or some other variation of it, just because of all that stuff that it adds. And you hear the compression, and it's great. When you want to go down the smoother side of things, you could try something like this from London Acoustics. This is their opto compressor, the Brighton. I love this thing. I think it's one of the best in the box compressors for vocals. Again, when you're going for like an opto kind of sound, and you want it to be a little more transparent, a little warmer. Here's without.
Yesterday became tomorrow.
With.
Would we be waiting for the sun?
This has brought it forward like quite a bit. If you wanted some dirt, there's a hot switch.
When the day is done,
you can hear that sort of filled out the low mids a little bit.
The waterfall,
and then you can add saturation, which maybe later on this tune picks up. So maybe you want to have these available to you later on, right? And not start off right off the bat with, like, say, the 1176 stuff. Also, here's another flavor. This is kind of cool. Let me put this on with the piano. This is your Frank Sinatra compressor, right? So I might be digging it a little too much, but alive. This is always a valid choice, right? To audition. I'm not sure what I went with in the end here, but and again, I've got. Got a couple more, but maybe I'll deal with the de-essing at this point. You hear those S's in there, right? And there's other sounds in there that are a little lower in frequency, like on the F's and the K's. And so I use this Toneboosters de-esser all the time.
And if yesterday became tomorrow,
see what it does? It doesn't dip at just one frequency.
Would the world just turn the other way?
It actually maps out what the sibilant frequencies are, and then ducks just that shape. And you can get pretty accurate with it. There's a lot of controls here. There's an HQ mode. I'll turn that on. It's just taking it right out, And then finally, let's drop in some of these. Got that delay, but a delay goes into the play. See what I mean? You want to be bringing in certain stuff. It's a trick that's as old as the hills, where you're going to be putting delay on like one word or the end of a phrase, but not necessarily putting. Well, there it is again. There's something going on. Yeah, that's It's probably a good idea how you go about the vocal. Real simple in the end. You got a EQ, a compressor, and a deesser, and then various reverb treatments. I might want to probably try to brighten it a little bit for this part. Actually, it's not even doing anything at this part. Yeah. So there you go. I mean, so yeah, there's your vocal chain right there. 3 things. EQ, compressor, deesser, those are like your main things that you want to do. You can add some space maybe with the delay or reverb. You could add maybe some stereo with the chorus or some micro pitch. That's another good one. You put distortion on it. I mean, you can do a lot with a voice, but the main essential things that you want to get right is to get the tone sitting right. You know, don't want it too deep. You don't want a lot of harsh high end. You want to be able to hear those mids, but it has to have enough high and top mid to cut through the mix. The denser that mix is, the more you might need. And what else? I don't know. There you go. That's.
I think you said it. I mean, to summarize, I would choose always either a Universal Audio or an Acustica, something really high end that is like a nice sharp knife. It touches the frequencies you need it to touch. It accentuates in a way that creates space and room in the mix for the vocal without accentuating the bad stuff.
Yeah, I mean, not only does it cut through skin, but it will do muscle and sinew and with a bit of effort, some bone, perhaps, you know, some of the smaller ones.
Yeah.
And,
yeah. Something to just hack through the
cartilage,
bone like
no problem. If your knife can't do cartilage,
right.
you're you know.
Yeah. Yeah. So these are beautiful tools, and that was a great vocal. Like I think that the SM7B is such a tricky mic to equalize that when you find, you know, whether it's pink that really gives it the aggression it needs, it's, you know, an SM7 is like a ribbon. It takes EQ well, but it needs either a high, you know, a good solid source, or it needs a good punchy EQ, because it's such a hard microphone to drive that most preamps can't do it without bringing up noise.
It is. I mean, it will take the level. So it is actually, it's very good for if you're doing rock vocals, metal vocals, punk vocals, somebody yelling. It's perfect. I mean, that's first mic maybe you should try to reach for if you're doing those styles of music, or even like a loud, just anything that's going to have a lot of SPL, because again, it can take it. Now, when you get quieter, it will give you a reasonable sound, but it does need a preamp that's quiet. Because this is when you start to, now you have to add maybe 50 dBs, 60. You want a preamp that could do 60, 70, even 80 dBs of gain without adding a lot of noise. And not every preamp can do it.
Yeah.
There's lots of expensive ones that can't do it. There's lots of cheap ones that can't do it. But I have come across some cheap ones that can do it. And of course, some expensive ones that are sort of designed for ribbons or for low gain microphones. And they won't add a lot of noise.
Yeah. That's right. But that's a great sounding track. I mean, you have a Dan Hill / Peter Gabriel vibe at different moments, right? So bringing out those parts of the voice, I find your 1 kilohertz is really interesting. I mean, you've got a great low end voice anyway, but these EQs were just magic. Yeah,
I mean, I love the Acustica stuff. It's it feels just like you're shaping the tone, and it feels like you have more play. So do I want 10 hertz or 10 kilohertz or 14? Well, I don't know. They both sound good. Do I want 1 or 2K?
Yeah.
I don't know. They both sound good.
Yeah.
It feels like more of a choice. And with a lot of other stuff, you don't feel like, okay, this frequency works, but this other one, maybe not so much. Right?
Yeah.
But stuff like the Acustica, the Manley, there are a lot of different brands that I like, but I know I could rely on these ones for sure.
And even if we couldn't grab one of these, we didn't feel like spending, or we're just starting out as a mixer, I would reach for in Logic, they've got a Pultec emulation that's really good. They have a Neve emulation that's really good. I would also reach for Waves Renaissance EQ.
Oh yeah, and Renaissance Vox, RVox.
That's the compressor, magical compressor. Yep.
You know, especially if you're just starting out and, you know, I don't know about all this compression stuff so much. Just get RVox. It's one knob. Well, it's two. One to compress the voice and make it louder, and another one to get rid of the noise and to gate out the stuff you don't want. So
exactly right. Exactly. All right, dude. I think that's a show.
Rock and roll. Feeling good.
Rock and roll. So guys, don't forget, send us some of your mixes. We want to be able to try some of this stuff with your music. I mean, the spotlight needs to be on you guys.
Yep.
So if you got some, I admire the courage it takes to share a mix, to share your performances. Don't be afraid to send them in to us, man. We would be happy to use them. Just drop us a note at info@mixorcist.com and talk to us about your royalty-free or copyright-free music. We don't want to break any laws now.
Yeah.
And
we don't want to get tagged on
baby.
music, so none of your no tracks from your major label album or anything either, because if we put that stuff up, they're just going to tag it, right? So
I mean, use your head kind of thing. We don't want to break any copyright laws, but if you're starting out, you're doing some mixes and it's free to use. I mean, let's try some different music, right? Let's get some R&B in here. Let's get some soul. Let's get some classic rock, some jazz,
some folk.
Why not, man?
Some folk.
Yeah, let's do it.
That's one kind of thing.
And we'll just bring the evil anyway.
Well, we're gonna run it all through the gurgle filter and the distressor and what else? It just anything that says extreme on it, or it has like blood or hatchets.
The rectifier with a W.
We'll get to that one.
All right, friends. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for watching the Mixorcist. Until next time, we will see you later.
Check it out.